But Seth, at least it works. Back in the Google days, we would still be
I
like,
remember, yeah, we'd all get kicked out, right? And then we'd have to come back.
restart. You'd have to restart your whole computer.
It was just awful. Anyway, guess what? We are live. Good morning. Happy Friday. It's 8/23, 2019, August 23, 2019. The year's going to be over in like 2 minutes. We're almost done, right?
Summer is over at least.
People are already starting to talk about QuickBooks Connect. My local supermarket is already stocking up with Halloween candy. It's not even September yet. I'm like,
yeah, I've got a Christmas tree up already.
By the time we get to Halloween, the candy's going to like go bad or something.
And you have skipped right over Accountex.
Yeah, well, that's, with good reason. Anyway, just kidding. Sorry. Yeah, Accountex too. Go Google Accountex. While you're Googling, what was it, Mariette? We're going to Google? Oh, Stephen King's The Smart Back Office, which is what today's...
Second time we've talked about Googling it. Which one of you did that cute little video on Google it? Mariette, I think it was.
Well, I know I've done the Let Me Google That For You app.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Why don't you Google that?
Yeah, let me Google that for you. I said this. How many of you are on the Nextdoor app, like for your local neighborhood?
Hey.
So today I'm on the Nextdoor app. I get the notifications, and I guess there's been people going around in my neighborhood that will like knock on the door, and if nobody answers, they try to open the door. Presumably, they're going to try and break in or something, right? So a lot of these idiots are getting caught on people's Ring cameras. I don't know, like, you would think by now people would be aware of this. Like, you're going to get caught on camera, and it's very easy to take that video feed and send it to the police. Hello? And this one genius who was full-on caught on camera, I mean, he had a baseball cap on, but he did nothing to try and hide his face, So, it won't take much for them to do any kind of facial recognition and figure out who this guy is. So somebody was on there this morning posting that, and Nextdoor gives you like this little section within the city that somebody lives in, and some genius in the thread asks, "Where is Wyoming Estates in Burbank?" And I felt like replying and saying, "Google it, you dummy."
I got a question.
What?
Would Batman get caught on a Ring camera?
No, he would have his mask on.
Okay.
But we would know it was Batman. We just wouldn't know who Batman is. We all know who Batman really is.
He wouldn't do any bad things. He wouldn't need to worry about being on camera.
Yeah, I want to get him on camera. I want Batman to come to my ring.
That would be cool.
That would be very cool.
All right, Adam, we have to we have to fly you out to where Mariette lives in your bat suit. But I want the Lego Batman version.
I'll bring the abs one, going with the abs.
All right, cool. Cool. And you could you know what? Batman should do like a workout video thing, right?
Very
Call
cool.
it Batman abs.
5-minute abs.
5-minute Batman abs. Bat abs. All right, who wants to talk about today's subject? That would be cool. Katrina's watching on the live feed.
Bad apps. We're going to talk about that's the hard one.
Everybody say hi, Katrina. She's on the live feed.
Hi, Katrina.
Katrina's got a lot of cool stuff going on in social media lately. Just want to say I've seen that. It's pretty awesome.
What?
Katrina's had a lot of cool stuff going on LinkedIn, like through social media and articles. Good job.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
She's writing them?
I believe it is her writing them, right?
I don't know why Katrina respond to that on the live Facebook feed. Anyway, today we're here to talk about the smart back office. So where is this coming from? Credit where credit's due. I was telling before we went live, a little over a year ago, I got an email. I'm on the email list for Stephen King, not the horror novelist, but there's a guy named Stephen King in our accounting community who works at a company called Growth Force. And he does a lot of research, and he puts out a lot of research on things that are going on in our industry. And he put out this article called The Smart Back Office. And it kind of lays out, the high-level areas that you want covered to run a smart back office. And then within that, he suggests some of the apps, that you need or can use to, to run that smart back office. I have different apps slightly, there's a lot of overlap, but I have some apps that I like that he didn't include, and he had some apps that he included that I don't necessarily love. So It's largely inspired by what he wrote about a year ago, maybe a little more, but it's also got a lot of my own flavor in it. And one of the things he talks about also is outsourcing. And so we have my friend Satish here, who's going to talk to us a little bit about that alongside Matthew. So we've got actually quite a densely packed schedule and outline for today. So I'm going to dive right in. But I want to first talk about some of the, kind of issues, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, that I see here. And I've said this a lot recently, so I'm sorry if I'm boring you saying the same things you've heard me say, but I think it's important. I see a lot of people getting confused because, you see somebody like me out there getting all excited about some new app. This year, probably the biggest, the biggest sort of app that I got excited about and a bunch of us got excited about was ClickUp. And we all ran and switched to ClickUp from whatever we were using before. Before that, I was using Active Collab, and I'd used Active Collab for a long time. And I honestly didn't think I would switch that soon or as quickly as I did. But when I started diving into ClickUp, I fell more and more in love. The more I saw what it could do and how it managed things, and a lot of you have recently seen examples of it. Not more than a few weeks ago, we covered ClickUp as one way of tracking your subscriptions, for all these apps that you're using, speaking of. And so a lot of people, I think, probably saw us making a big buzz about ClickUp and said, oh my God, I got to use ClickUp. And the answer is no, you don't. The only reason you need to use ClickUp is if you have a project management solution that's left you wanting, right? That doesn't solve the problem entirely that you want solved with it. And that's kind of the barometer that I suggest people always use is, does it solve a problem I don't already have solved, or does it solve one better, right? In my case, ClickUp solved one better. I loved Active Collab, but ClickUp just did certain things a lot better. And I saw I saw how it was going to improve things even more than Active Collab had improved things. And so I made the decision ultimately to switch over to ClickUp. And of course, when I get excited about an app, I start doing videos and talking about it on Zooms and so on and so forth. So the moral of the story is, don't just pick an app that you want to learn and use because you see other people talking about it and using it. We have to approach this another way. So I'm going to share my screen. Where's Greg Cullip today? Every time I go to share my screen now, I think of him. This is how we want to start looking at it. And these are kind of the high-level areas, and you'll see we've got it broken down into sort of sub-levels. But here are the major areas that Stephen talked about in his Smart Back Office article, and there's a PDF. And Mariette, I saw you posted something in the chat, but that doesn't look like the same thing from the URL anyway. But I'll get you guys the PDF that I'm.
It's in there. You have to Google it, and then it's going to come up, and there's an account text.
Yeah, but the one I got from him wasn't from Account Text. It was from Growth Force. So unless he happened to put it, okay.
It's in there too. If you Google it, you'll see Growth Force PDF.
Okay. All right, so I guess he put it up there with Account Text. Anyway, so these are the major areas, and I added in CRM. He didn't have that one included. But these are some of the major, very high-level areas that we need to solve for, let's just say, in terms of choosing apps and a tech stack, right? We need an accounting solution, right? So that's the first question. Is your accounting solution working for you? And if you're the accountant, as most of us here are, providing the services to your clients, what accounting solutions are you going to want to use for your clients, right? And of course, we could spend a whole Zoom discussing whether you just focus on one accounting app, like I've chosen to do with QuickBooks Online, or you want to serve more people by, working with several accounting apps. That's entirely up to you. It's a personal decision, right? But the bottom line is, do you have an accounting solution that works, right? Does it solve the problem you need solved of being able to process accounting information and run reports and get the information you need about a business? What about a CRM? Do you need a CRM? I don't know that everybody needs a CRM, right? We need some kind of a system maybe for managing contacts, but most of you have that already. If you're using G Suite like I do, Google Contacts actually works pretty well, right? I do happen to use Nimble, but even as I use Nimble, I don't use it in the true sense of a CRM where I'm really closely managing sales pipelines, which is what CRMs were originally really designed for, is to manage a sales pipeline, a pipeline of prospects, right? So that's a question you really need to ask yourself. Do you need a CRM? You probably don't, to be honest with you. You probably don't need a CRM. Most of you, from what I've gathered from talking with a lot of you, are getting most of your business through word of mouth. You don't need a CRM. You might even need something simple. You can even design something in Airtable to just track conversations and just, and Nimble is actually great about this is, where you can tag some people to be reminded of who you want to make sure you follow up with, like within a week or so while they're still sort of warm before you lose them, right? So you may or may not need a CRM. Bill pay. We all know this is what we're going to dive a little deeper into in a little bit. Lots of apps that we can talk about here. Ultimately, you have to choose one or two maybe, right? And decide this is what we're going to use and answer that question. Will these apps solve my problem of managing bill pay properly, right? That's the ultimate question that needs to get answered. Workflow and process automation. Could you better streamline your workflows with automation? Of course, we're going to talk about Zapier. And then I have a couple of others that I want to talk about under that heading, time tracking. I am honestly almost of the opinion that we need to look no further than T-Sheets. But I'd be curious when we come back to this part if anybody has any reason why they have another time tracking app that they like or maybe like better than T-Sheets, or maybe for a certain case it's better than T-Sheets. I'd be curious to hear that kind of feedback. Lots of payroll solutions out there. Expense management for sure, Expensify and Receipt Bank, and of course my favorite is Billbees. We're going to look at billing and collections and cash flow, and within that you'll see we'll look at some cash flow forecasting tools, some interesting ones actually on billing. We're going to look at management reporting apps, and then we're going to look at a couple of interesting ones, one in particular that Stephen had that I had not even heard of that actually looks really interesting under the heading of artificial intelligence, right? So as you can see, I've got this outlined in Airtable. I've got a pretty thorough list of apps here in Airtable on this other apps tab. And we're going to look at how to take the apps or look at each area and choose one app and say, I just need one app for each of these for now to get started, right? Earlier this week in 97 and Up, I did a session where somebody had, because, actually more than one person really had reached out to me and said, I'm overwhelmed with all these apps. If I was just going to choose one app, what would you have me choose? And I said, Dynalist, no question, hands down. It's really easy to use. And we did a bit of a deep dive this week. And I think a lot of people saw the power of Dynalist. On the surface, it looks pretty simple and easy to use. But when you start digging in, it can get pretty deep and it can get pretty robust and powerful, right? So under accounting, like I mentioned, I've just listed QuickBooks Online because in my own practice, I made the decision, and I'm actually glad I did, that I'm just going to go all in with QuickBooks Online, and this is what I'm going to use, and I'm going to use it exclusively. And so from a staffing standpoint, I just need to have my staff trained on this one accounting application. And I've seen people out there saying, well, there are some businesses where one is better than the other. Honestly, I'm not buying that. I have yet to run into a case of a client where QuickBooks Online didn't work and work really well. And especially now that there is QuickBooks Online Advanced for the bigger companies, I'm even more convinced that we have the infrastructure in place here and into its ecosystem to handle just about any client we'd ever want to. Right? I don't see a need for myself to go outside of this world, and it keeps it simple for me. I have one app to learn for an accounting system, and I can learn it. I can learn every nook and cranny of what it does, and I can stay up to date with the rollouts of the updates, and I know exactly what it does. I know where its limits are, and I know the ecosystem. I know how to find and bring together the apps that complete the ecosystem, the tech stack, if you will, that I'll need to do this. Before we get into all the other areas in the apps, I do want to talk about in-house versus outsourced. Stephen talks about this in his sort of white paper that he did. And for this, I'm going to let Matthew and Satish take over and share with us a little bit, because Satish actually has a firm that called Analytics, which will enable you to outsource as an option for sure. And I know that Matthew and Linda among us here right now have both worked with them and have both said amazingly good things about them. I've been in touch with Satish, but just haven't had the opportunity, full disclosure and transparency, to actually get started. But the day will come, I'm sure. I've been so busy with courses and things that I haven't been that focused on consulting and the sorts of work that I'd be inclined to outsource to anyone. But if I do outsource to anyone, I can assure you it's going to be analytics based on everything that I've heard. So Matthew, I'm going to give it over to you and Satish for a little bit to talk about in-house versus outsourced.
Thank you, Seth. I figured real quickly I'd just tell a little bit about kind of how Parkway utilizes analytics services, but from there, Satish is the best person to talk about the company. He's done a phenomenal job developing and growing this business over how long has analytics been around, Satish?
Analytics been around for about a dozen years, 12 years.
Okay, so they definitely know what they're doing. We actually started using analytics. Boy, it's almost been 2 years now. We're just shy of actually 2 years with the company, and we came upon their company after trying a different outsourcing company previously, which probably the best thing ever happened, because you'll never understand how sweet something is until you've had something really bitter. And the other experiences we've had were very unfortunate. They just didn't work out well. What amazed me about analytics was how closely their workflows already kind of aligned with the stuff that we were doing with Parkway, and how powerful their team was, how quickly they were able to adapt to the stuff that we needed to have done. And they literally, in our time of need, they jumped in and just handled it right away. Their entire team is phenomenal. What I've found to be some of the biggest benefits of using an outsourced team is really it's going to give you a flexible workforce that makes it a lot easier to scale your business. So we've all had a hard time trying to find a quality employee that you maybe want to add to your team. For us, we've been able to help solve part of this by using analytics. There's a whole team on the backside, so we don't have to worry about training one person up and then having them take off on us, 6 months down the road. There's an entire team that helps support the entire back end, which is great. Not to mention, when you add on staff, you have to worry about having office space for them. Now, I know we all work remotely nowadays, but there's still quite an aspect of, at least for our company, we have an office on purpose. So we would still have to have extra space. We'd have to have extra computers. There's just so many additional expenses that go with having somebody in the seat inside of the company. We believe in kind of a hybrid approach to it. We want to actually continue to add on accountants and bookkeepers to Parkway, but we want to empower those people by providing the back-end support so they can stay more focused on the customer or client relationships instead. Now, one of the biggest things people always ask us about, of course, is how exactly it works, security protocols in a sense, right? And, communications and such. So Satish, do you mind kind of filling everybody in on how you utilize or how your team works with firms like ours?
Yeah, thank you for the kind words, Matthew. So let me actually give you a little bit of history. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good. So I'm a CPA myself. So, definitely that has been, I've been doing it for 30 years now. I'm kind of familiar with the both end of the worlds where, I used to be a CPA where, we did audits in internal controls, consulting, IT consulting, also, write-up works and tax work. So kind of familiar with all the bookkeeping and the CPA world. And then, me being an Indian, and I think you guys probably know a lot of Indians are entrepreneurs. And, so I went on my own and joined my brother's company. We was a high-tech company. We grew it to a good size. We sold it to a public company. So then I was involved in multiple startups and things like that. So always been passion growing companies. And, then, about 12 years ago, I said, how can we take these skills and help small businesses? Because, what made the big company successful is the technology and, the ERP system, the enterprise resource planning. And, our goal, analytics goal, is to kind of, provide the tools and resources that only big companies can afford. So, now with the technology being available and they are so reasonable, I think the biggest challenge that a lot of us face is just there are just too many choices. And how do we know what is right and what is, what will work? I think if you saw the list, And to know all these kind of applications, whether it's a CRM or communications or the billing, I think it's just that you kind of need a one full-time person to know. And so our goal has been to not only just to do debits and credit and say give the our clients a financial statement, but also getting into some of the business analytics. How can we really help the small businesses? And so that's how we've been, I think, working with many companies like your. So give you some background. We started about a dozen years ago. Focus has been bookkeeping. So when you say bookkeeping, you're talking about accounts payable, receivables, payroll processing, monthly closing entries, accruals and prepaids, preparing budgets, forecasting, getting into those controller level job. And then we work with some of the CFO support roles where we do cash flow forecasting, budgets, and even building the financial model. So if you want to grow and, so what if type of analysis. And last but not the least, getting into business analytics where, more getting into the operational level, in a professional services, what is your utilization rate? What is your realization rates? We do a lot of restaurants, we do a lot of hotels, what is your occupancy percentage? How are you faring with the last year versus this year? So those services. So I think because of our size, we now have about 15 people in US, and I think we have a pretty large office in India. That's where I come from. We have about 400 people. So because of our size, we can actually afford to have a dedicated team that focuses on technology and evaluating these applications. And also the best thing is we work with quite a few smart people like Matt and Linda, and we actually learn from them the best practices. And so we work with many CPA firms, large CPA firms. Some of them are pretty large, actually, hundreds of people. And I think good things we learn from them is what are the applications they're using, what are the best practices they're following, and then we can share with our partners. I think that has been one of the strongest value that our partners have found is to kind of, what applications are there. In fact, a lot of them they do is when you are prospecting, and if you're not sure about the solution, you might be talking to a client and say, okay, I come up with this particular solution. I'm using this, I have this particular problem. And a lot of time what happens is not everybody's aware of everything. So what our partners do, they reach out to us and they say, Satish, have you come across this type of situation before? I may not have, but because we have a lot of people. So before you go on prospecting call or meeting, we can share ideas and say, okay, how do we make this? And we may let you know about the particular applications that are out there or, some tactics. So, we've been pretty successful dealing with the partners. We also do direct clients. So we are kind of familiar with what you guys go through every single day, processing the bill. And one of the biggest challenges that we find that everybody's having is the communications, actually. And, I think that was one of the, how do you communicate? How do you make onboarding successful? I think that is where a majority of a lot of challenges come from is, getting them onboarded. What information? So I think one of the things we do with Matt and Linda is, preliminary financial analysis where we would share, we would do a complete kind of health check of a QuickBooks file or a Xero or Intact or, whatever application we're using. We kind of give you a report, health report. It's just like going to a doctor and, checking the blood pressure. And so we do that with the accounting file, and we can give you a written, report that basically helps you how bad or how good the books are. And based on that, you can actually prepare a proposal. So
Linda,
hopefully that gives you some idea.
Linda, you're better at this than I am of utilizing their review process, right? Do you mind?
Yeah, I actually, one of the things I love about the work that they do, one of the things they give you a free month. So I was a little leery at first. I got recommended from you, so there was a little bit less because you had been so successful and you had set up systems. But one of the things I love about analytics is that they do the work, and of course in the beginning you start to really check it over, but they actually go through and do a step that when my other bookkeepers do the work, I have them go and review their own work, but then I have to go in and review it. And then I have to go back to them and tell them what I need to be fixed. And this is how it should be. And I don't seem to have to do that with analytics. Analytics handles the job really well. And one of the big things that I love about what they do is I onboard a new client. I just did one recently, and they want the tax return. They tie the books to the tax return. And that's a job I used to do all the time. I don't have to do that with analytics. They do it. So they take on higher level stuff. They ask for the depreciation schedules, things that you don't typically get, a notice from the bookkeeper that's something that needs to be done in a file. So those are things that you don't think about that are jobs that I do that I don't have to do anymore, I have a great team. It starts with Baravi and of course Satish, and I have Ashish that I really love. And the people I work with and you meet with them, it's no different than any other bookkeeper I work with because they're not in my office either. My office, as you can see, is in my house. So I'd love to have somebody local, but it's nice to have their team. It's just a peace of mind.
Yeah, so thank you for the good word. I think just want to let you know that it's not like all or none type of situations. I think use us as you need. So some people will just use it for one particular function. Some people say, hey, I want to grow my practice and I don't want to deal with the people or turnover and all those things. We take care of that. So I think it depends on your model. You can have bookkeepers on your staff, and we work with every one of you. So we have some partners have multiple bookkeepers, and we kind of directly deal with them. So I don't want you to think that, hey, we either all or none type of thing. I think it depends on your strategy.
Yeah, I'll say this. If you are thinking about doing something like this, as I think Matthew pointed out, it's a great way to scale. You don't have to put time and energy into going out there and trying to find and hire people. What I would say is try it. Test analytics out with one of your clients. See how it goes. Either you're going to be really happy and you're going to want to give them all of your clients to work on, or not. But my guess is, based on Matthew and Linda's experience, you're going to find it's worth it. I love the fact, Satish, that you guys do have a presence in the U.S., that I know you're based in Texas, right? I've met you guys in person
Boston.
in San Jose. I'm sorry?
I'm in Boston. Bhairavi is in Texas.
Oh, you're in Boston. Okay. But most of your people are in Texas, no?
Well, my person that nobody else can have is in Texas. So
I see. Okay.
I call claims to her. So
Got it.
Our corporate office is in Boston.
Okay. The point is, you guys are here in the U.S. I've met with you and your team in person in San Jose at QuickBooks Connect last year. I can share that you're a wonderful group of people. The conversations I've had with you directly, Satish, have always been positive, and I've always had a good feeling every time I've ever spoken to you about anything. So I wanted to bring this out here to show everybody that this is an option to help you scale and grow. And like Matthew pointed out, you'll get the opportunity to work with analytics on the apps and the tech stack that you choose to use for your firm. They're teachable. If you're using an app that they're not using, they'll learn it with you and they'll figure it out. And then they'll probably take it 10 miles further with you, so to speak, once you get started with them. So I definitely plan on employing the services of analytics myself. Like I said, my primary focus now is developing courses, so that's not something I'm able to outsource. That's something I do myself. Satish, let me know if you ever hire somebody to do video production. We'll talk. So anything else real quick before we move on from the in-house versus outsourcing piece? Anybody else have any thoughts, reactions, questions?
One last comment that I would have is, obviously it goes without saying, there's definitely a financial aspect of this as well. If you really consider the cost of hiring an internal person in comparison to utilizing an outsourced service, there is definitely a dollar savings there, but not all dollar savings are equal. So again, that's why I really stress with this specific company, I'm proud to put my name on it because they've done a very good job for me. And I think that the true success in it will be a hybrid approach. Still adding people onto our team, but freeing them up to be, spending more time with clients and not having to do some of the back end, standard practice stuff.
Right. And Stuart in the chat is asking, what about the quote, lone Canadian? But Stuart, you are hardly alone here. You have Tiffany and Tamitha. Canada is well represented here in this Zoom today. Satish, can you guys handle like Canadian accounting issues and questions, which obviously are a little different than the US?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have as many clients in Canada, but definitely accounting is accounting. So I think, like you said, if there is any specific that we don't know, we are pretty fast learners.
Got it. And then Matthew, are you using ClickUp with analytics? Are you using that with them collaboratively, or?
No, we've really been focused on using, we use Microsoft Teams for all of our communications and our own internal processes.
Mm-hmm.
They use another program called Excello, which is really, really impressive. It's kind of like a high-end, super crazy ClickUp that we're trying to work a little bit.
And what's that called? Excello?
Excello, A-C-C-E. I'm going to spell it wrong.
Somebody put it in the chat for us. You know what we need? We need somebody to be like our scribe each week to take good notes on some of this stuff, especially when we start talking about apps. I'm going to have to employ somebody's help to become our meeting scribe.
Linda, were you trying to say something earlier?
Yeah, I was just going to say that one of the things I wanted to say about Satish's team is I work with law firms. He's got a law firm team for me, and they know my app that I use, Lean Law. And they know they use Liscio, so they know how to use Liscio, Lean Law. They know the whole app stack with Hub. They work with HubDoc, so they know it. And I've got a specific set of people that are in the programs that I use, and they have that for probably e-commerce. I'm going to assume Satish, and they probably have it for other industries, restaurant. I know restaurant industry as well. So if you are in a niche business, you can work with analytics and have a team that's dedicated to the specialty that you work in. They know the lingo, they know all the things you need to know, which is important. They know trust accounting, which is what I love.
Great. All right. Well, so stick around, Satish, because we're going to talk about a lot of apps that I'm going to suggest people look into. I'll be curious to know how many of these apps you guys are already using and are familiar with. And you might want to jot down some of the ones you're not already using and familiar with, because I've got some interesting ones here, based on my research. And so the next thing I want to talk about, because it's a hot topic, and I think there's good reason for it being a hot topic, which is the artificial intelligence part of our ecosystem and our world. And for starters, I want to talk about, so Alexa, are you volunteering to become our scribe? I see you put the URL for Excello in for us. Can I nominate you for today? I don't know if Alexa has her mic up.
I had to find the mute button because I was looking at Excello. I'll try.
All right, thanks. Or everybody just feel free to, as we mentioned apps, just grab the URLs and put them in the chat. I'll save the chat so I can drop that into the notes when I upload this to the website tomorrow. So artificial intelligence, how many of you have used Chata.ai? If you haven't, please try Chata.ai. If you don't know what you're missing if you don't use this app. It uses natural language and learning, so you can type queries. But it's so cool what this does, the way you can create dashboards. So when you type your queries, you can save them in a dashboard. And then they also have a reporting engine. And there's a little bit of a difference between dashboard and reports. I'm just learning this myself. But think of a dashboard as at a glance, right? Whereas reports would be more detailed and in-depth. But it works very similarly in that you have like a screen that you populate with these queries. And look, this is what everybody seems to be screaming for, are these sort of high-level KPI type bird's eye views of what's going on in ours or our client's business. And Chata.ai has done a beautiful job of giving us an infrastructure and a platform in which we can set up these dashboards and share it with our clients. So I think of a dashboard, when I think of a dashboard, I think of my car's dashboard. What does that do for me? It gives me at a glance how fast am I going and how much gas I've got in the tank, right? And that's kind of what we need to know for our businesses, right? How fast are we going? How much gas do we have in the tank? How much money are we making? And how long is the cash going to last, right? That's how I sort of equate those things. And that at a high level, and then I can't be too distracted by my dashboard because I'll crash my car, but I need it to give me enough information to know if something does need more attention, right? So that I can slow down and pull over if I need to and check the engine if necessary, right? So I like to think of it, that kind of analogy and comparison when I'm thinking about financial dashboards. That's what it should do for me. And then the reports would be the more detailed. Let's take a deeper look, but let's make it visual. Let's make it interactive. They have capabilities where you can comment back and forth with your clients. So if you look at a bar chart that shows your income and expenses and net profit alongside one another, it's really easy to have a conversation. Why were expenses so high this one particular month, or why were revenues so low this one particular month? These are the conversations we should be having with our clients to add real value, well beyond just doing the books. Download code reconcile, automated today. If you haven't got that part automated, then we have some work to do. Matthew will tell you bank feeds and bank rules will do 90 to 95 to 99% of that, right? Very little to do there if you're employing the resources that are available. So definitely look at chata.ai.
Hey, Seth, real quickly,
Yeah.
just to make sure, because some people, when it comes to the idea of natural language, when you're talking about artificial intelligence and natural language, all that means is the ability to ask a normal question in a normal manner and for it to understand you, which is actually really powerful technology. So you don't have to worry about your client having to figure out the right keyword to hit to get through.
You don't need to know technical accounting language to query this thing. You can ask very simple, straightforward English questions or other languages.
Or Canadian.
What?
Or Canadian, eh?
Or Canadian language. Very simple Canadian language. How much money am I making, eh? Right? Tiffany's cracking up. So check that out. The other one that I want to mention, which I think probably has some overlap with Chata, but I got the impression in looking at their website that it did some other things, forecasting and such. Chata, I've been having a weekly call with Haley from Chata, by the way. She's awesome. I absolutely love her. She's just so cool and so smart. And she's been teaching me each week, like what I need to know about Chata. I've been getting these deep dives with her. So you can expect I'll be doing some videos on it. I just want to learn it better before I do. I can't pass along something if I haven't got it myself. But the other one I want to mention that you should all look at is called myadvisor.ai. And Stephen mentioned this in his white paper, and I clicked over and poked around their website. And it looks really interesting. It looks like there's a lot of overlap, like I said, with Chata, but it looks like it does some other things that Chata doesn't do, and vice versa. So myadvisor.ai, definitely worth taking a look at. So those are the two for now under artificial intelligence. Okay, and then we're also going to look at AI accounting software hybrids. Right, so I'm going to actually move that up in my outline here because it's worth talking about next. And the one that comes to mind here, Doug Sleater is kind of hot on this. I've been talking with him lately, is BotKeeper. Now, BotKeeper was something that this company developed for themselves initially to automate their bookkeeping functions, but then they realized there was value in offering it to the rest of us. To, again, going back to automation, BotKeeper, I don't know it that well. I only know what I understand from my conversations with Doug about it, to be honest. But it's something that's been on my list and still is to take a look at to see. Apparently what they will do is help you really automate substantially the basic bookkeeping process of download code and reconcile. So it might take rules and sort of take them to the nth degree, is kind of the impression I get, so that it will, instead of having to create rules, it will just figure stuff out for you in terms of where something likely needs to get coded, and it'll kick out anomalies when you need to be aware of them. So
Exactly.
anybody here?
BotKeeper, with BotKeeper, it's still people doing the work. Okay. And also, you have to sign a year contract with them. So just be aware of that's part of the deal with BotKeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And it's built on top of Intuit's platform. So you have to have a QuickBooks Online or Xero subscription. Then BotKeeper goes on top of that. I mean, so Enrico, the gentleman who's like the lead person with the whole thing, he's a brilliant guy. This is not his first startup, and he's done some pretty impressive stuff. But it's definitely a great example of a hybrid solution because it's technology and human review of the stuff.
Right. Okay. So take a look at BotKeeper, and I think it's worth pausing here now that we're starting to kind of create a list of apps here, is that I don't want people to get overwhelmed. What I want you to do is do some research. I want you to go back to the kind of list that I started you off with today in Airtable and ask yourself, do I need something in one of these areas? Answer that question first, then do the research on the apps that fill that void, if there is a void. But first determine if and where there's a void, because if there's not a void, don't waste your time. You'll just get yourself overwhelmed, right? Start with, do I need this problem solved or solved better? If the answer to one of those questions is yes, then start researching the apps and find which one you think is going to work best for you. There's going to be a range in some cases. Some apps are going to be extreme overkill for your needs, where you might just need something much simpler, right? If you need a simple project management app, like I said in the beginning, Dynalist may just do the trick, right? So I just want to make sure that that's really clear, because we are going to, in the next 15 minutes that we have left, I'm going to leave you with a good size list of apps that fit into these different areas to check out. And some of you are already probably using some of these. So the next area I want to talk about is bill pay. Now, a lot of you know my favorite app in this realm is Billbees. Hands down, no question. Within bill pay, we also have the apps that fetch bills, right? So we're talking about Receipt Bank and HubDoc, right? Now, the reason I don't love the fetching process, period, is because of the constant having to do multi-factor authentication verifications, which in my experience defeats the purpose. If I have to stop every day, which I was having to when I was trying these, if I have to stop every day to feed a code in, it defeats the purpose of trying to have this automated, because the purpose of having something automated is that I don't need to intervene. And so what I loved about the Billbees concept is it's not trying to fetch for you, because they're aware of this very issue that creates all this friction. And so instead, with Billbees, I can incorporate Zapier, which we're going to talk about. Bottom line, they give you an email address to forward to. And I can easily use Zapier to create processes to pretty much automate that process, right? If I know that I'm getting an email every month from box.com with an invoice, I can even create a rule in Gmail that says every email that comes from box.com gets forwarded to Billbees. I set that up once. I'm done. I'm out. I will never have to feed a code. I will never have to do anything, because then Billbees does an amazing job of reading what's on that bill and pushing it into QBO. Right? And only if that bill is a bill that needs to get paid. Because if it doesn't need to get paid, if there's language on the bill that suggests that it's going to be paid automatically on some day out of the month because you have it on auto pay, then the concept behind Billbees, that Billbees has around that, is it's going to be downloaded in your bank feed, and it's going to get added in perhaps with a rule and coded itself that way. So they don't want to produce duplicates by also pushing that in. So they don't push those things in. They are working on a process. They're aware that you could have a process where Billbees pushes it in and then you match it up with the bank feed. But again, they want to create a process that's foolproof, that doesn't provide duplicates, right? And the reason for that is because if somebody, like a lot of us sitting here, understand that you have to do the third-party app before the bank feed to match things up. If you don't know that, if your client doesn't know that, you're going to wind up with duplicates when you have something pushing it in and it comes down in the bank feed, right? It's it's almost a guarantee. Okay, so that's why I like Billbees. I know a lot of you love Receipt Bank and HubDoc too. So, and Billbees does work in Canada. It work, and they can handle everything. My favorite thing about Billbees is the repository, the retrieval, how easy it is to find something, right? And they are working on a process also that's going to make it really easy to verify that you've got a copy of every document for every transaction on each credit card and bank account, so that you're bulletproof, as I've been saying. They are working on a process for ensuring that you can be assured, using Billbees, that you are bulletproof, that you have every transaction document that you need. And you can quickly identify which ones you don't, so you can go get them and add them in. So that's the other thing I love about Billbees, is these guys are actively developing and updating their software. And they have the bill pay feature, which costs a fraction of those other solutions that a lot of you are familiar with out there for that purpose. So that's the bill pay piece.
One quick little plug thing. That's one of the services that analytics actually helps us with, just so you know, because they happen to use bill.com, but that they actually have implemented that whole part of the process to be able to take care of all the accounts payable as an outsourced service also.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next is financial institution transactions processing. This is Matthew's little addition to our outline for the day, I believe. because I didn't recognize that. I'm like, okay, that looks new. I'm like,
I
that's
maybe
got
sneak that in my bed.
That's Matthew's contribution. So, and within that, we have a couple of subcategories: bank feed API. So some of these I've never heard of: Finicity, Plaid, Yodlee I'm very familiar with, and then there's LedgerSync, of course, which is from our friend Maurice, who's actually been here with us in the past. Right, so I don't know, Matthew, but most of these things like Yodlee is something that developers use in the background. I don't know that anybody here would ever go out and employ the use of something like Yodlee. So can you give us a little context on that?
Yeah, so part of the reason I tried to put it under like bank feed API is because it is more at the higher level, the development level, if you're actually trying to fully implement and have your own direct source instead of using, like you can use a LedgerSync, a HubDoc, or a file this. Those are all different fetching applications that can fetch the transactions and statements for you, but it's very end user product. API being that you can build it into your own applications if you wanted to. It's more like the direct source itself.
Right, but like you just pointed out, there are very few people who are building their own applications. So this stuff is really more for the developer side.
On the API ones, you are correct, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Auto entry is coming. Just bear with me. Auto entry is not a bank. Well, anyway, we'll get to that because this actually addresses some things that are coming up later in the outline. So we'll have a little bit of overlap with this. Bank feed aggregate. Again, we have LedgerSync. We have HubDoc. How is HubDoc a bank feed aggregator?
Because so they're also grabbing the transactions and the statements. They do it in a different format. They're doing it as a CSV. So that's why it's not my first choice, but it is a aggregator. Okay,
and you all know why I hate HubDoc and how it handles the bank feed, the CSV files, right? Because it strictly pulls them on a calendar month, regardless of what the true statement cutoff is, and that actually makes it worse, right? I'm a big fan of going into the bank account and downloading the CSV exactly consistent with the bank statement, because that helps me if I get stuck trying to reconcile a month and I need to find something quickly to see where I'm off. And then, of course, we have the one and the only vendor sync to catch up and clean up on your bank feeds. I even discussed with Matthew, even though vendor sync is not built specifically to work with QBO, it still could be used to clean up your, to sort of prep your CSV from your bank account and then create a file that's easily imported into QBO and then matched up. So that's something actually we were going to talk about presenting here one of these Fridays on how that process might work. So we'll do that soon. Then I want to talk about billing, collections, and cash flow, right? Now that's a lot. Stephen had kind of grouped these together. If I had more time, I would have split this up. I don't know why he grouped them the way he did. But within that, let's first talk billing and collections. Now, by billing and collections, I'm talking about how we actually get our money from our clients, right? Right. So the first thing is I happen to love Intuit payments. I like how easy that makes it, especially if I'm sending invoices out. It's so easy. People just get an invoice. There's a review and pay button. They can click on it. It takes them right to a screen where they can easily choose if they want to pay by any major credit card or ACH. I've actually had clients remark to me about how easy it makes it for them to pay me. And they like that. And I like that. It's good for cash flow when I give my clients a very easy way to get me paid. And the clients appreciate it because they're not spending all kinds of time fumbling around trying to figure out how to get me paid when they have work to do, right? So I love Intuit payments for that. One of my favorite apps for just invoicing and just getting deep with how you actually go about the process of sending invoices out to your clients and setting up payment plans and other things is ChargeOver. I've had Ryan from ChargeOver on here several times. I try to get him on here at least once a year to give us kind of an update about what those guys are up to. So ChargeOver is definitely an app to look at as far as simplifying your life and that of your clients when it comes to sending out invoices and getting paid on those invoices. And they can handle the payment processing too. We have the question, CPA charge I use for my other business because a company that shall not be named denied my merchant account. Okay, that sounds a little cryptic. I'm not sure what that means. And I'm not clear whose comment that was, actually.
I think he was talking about Intuit.
No, that I got, but anyway.
That was my Batman voice, sorry.
I use it for my cannabis business.
Oh, got it. Right. Yeah. And that business in particular, let's be clear now, because that's not Intuit's fault. A lot of merchant processors will not touch that business because they consider it very risky.
CPA charge does do that though. Like
Right.
they're pretty welcoming and they have the same flow as QuickBooks payments in a lot of ways.
Right. Right. But that's important to be aware of when you're getting into payment solutions. Is a lot of businesses, they assess risk, because in effect it is like they're giving you credit. You know, they're counting on you being able to fork the money over to, you know, they want to make sure they don't get kind of shafted, so to speak. So certain businesses are considered risky, and based on that, some merchant solutions will not work with you, such as cannabis. The other one is actually something called Bill and Pay. It's just straight out billandpay.com. I've never used it. I've seen it mentioned here and there, not a whole lot, but Stephen mentions it in his white paper, and it made me curious enough to click over and poke around their website, and it looked pretty interesting to me. So billandpay.com. Okay, and then we have accounts receivable cadences, and Matthew, you put in Aromatic. I remember Aromatic being more of like a cloud cart connector type of solution. Tell me about this.
So Aromatic is actually, they have an amazing development team to where they've grown to be so much more than just like an AR cadence program. But where they started off was, it was the ability to connect it to your accounting platform, and they work with all the way up into mid-market as well, different softwares. Once you have invoices created, you can batch create invoices in Aromatic and then set up a timing structure to it that after 5 days or so, it will automatically send out an email. You can have it automatically send a text message. You can have it set up reminders for you within the program to make phone calls out to the company. And you can call straight from the program itself. You can do anything from full proposals, estimates, all the way to acceptance of it. You can have your different payment cards that you want, so Stripe, Square, everything. But really for this aspect of it, again, it helps automate the reminder process for anybody who may owe you some money before and after. So if it's before it's past due, and even when it becomes past due. It's a great company.
Gotcha.
Matthew, can you put that link in the chat? Because I
Yes, and Alexa, to your question on Stephen's white paper, Marriott did post the link. It's well above now in the chat, but I'll, of course, provide it again in the notes. So,
thank you.
So we'll have that available. The next area, and we're running short on time, so I'm going to move a little quickly. Everything will be in the notes so you can research this stuff. And what I'm hoping you'll be able to take away from this is a good thorough outline of all the major areas you want to have covered in terms of your back office operations, and the list of apps that are available to help you close the gaps on these processes, you know, all your options, so that you could theoretically put together a tech stack that handles everything you need handled. But I really want to underscore that is you have to decide whether or not each of these things is something you need handled first. Then you can look at the apps and decide which app will best handle it for you, right? So the next area that we want to make sure we have covered, especially for our clients, since most of us here are accountants and bookkeepers serving clients, is we always want to be aware of clients' working capital needs, right? Cash flow, right? That's why this is under that cash flow part, is we want to make sure we can line up financing if and when our clients need it. And of course, when's the best time to get financing for a business? When they don't need it, right? And as one of my mentors years ago taught me, you always want to make sure you have access to cash so that you don't miss out on opportunities, right? If all your cash is tied up in inventory and uncollected receivables, that's a problem. So when you don't need it is the time to line up a lending source so that you can tap into the working capital needs when you need them. And that's when you'll get favorable rates because you're in a good position cash-wise. You know, when they evaluate your risk will be evaluated as low. So if you've already got the financing lined up, then when the day comes that you need it, that's the problem. Most people wait till the day comes that they need it, and then their financials don't look so good, much harder to get financing that way, and definitely not favorable. You're going to be paying much higher rates. So line it up now before your clients need it. And so a couple of apps to look at to help with this. Fundira. Number one on my list, the best, right? Because one application gets sourced to many lenders. It's almost like you hear in commercials for some other products. It truly is like they're competing for your business, and you get to look at all your options to see which is going to be the best. And there's all different kinds, right? There are lenders that will lend with your receivables pledged as collateral, and there are other lenders that will lend on other bases. So definitely my number one choice to look at for funding and financing to help with cash flow would be Fundera, no question. Next one is QuickBooks Capital. That's newer, right? It's not new, but it's newer. Then we have Fundbox. I've played with Fundbox. I love how easy Fundbox makes it to get money like tomorrow. There's no approval. There's no application process. Fundbox will look at your QuickBooks Online company, and they can, analyze the payment history from your customers and use that to establish their own version of your creditworthiness. And on that basis, they will lend you money, drop it into your account, and then they pull out a payment every week to repay it. And you can decide how quickly to pay it off. So if you want to spread out the cash flow, obviously the fee will be increased, but you can pay it over 24 weeks instead of 12 or whatever it is. They'll give you choices, right? So Fundbox is great. And then the other one I wanted to mention is Cabbage, right? I haven't used Cabbage much myself, but I know a lot of people have used it and have had success with it. So those are the things to look at to make sure that you have some kind of a funding tool in your arsenal available at the ready when you need it, but set it up before you need it. Talk to your clients now, the clients that have good cash flow positions, and say, you know what? Cash flow is good. This may seem counterintuitive, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to line up some kind of a funding source so that you have access to even more cash should you need it, should an opportunity come. Classic example is you have some e-commerce business and an opportunity comes up where they could buy a lot of inventory that they already sell a lot of at a much lower cost than they're accustomed to paying, and they need cash because you're going to have to pay up front for something like that. Right? So that's the kind of thing I think about in terms of why I would do this, or how I would explain to my client why they should do this at a time when it doesn't seem like they really need it. Okay. And then next, cash flow forecasting. I am so hot on and so in love now with Giraffe. It's spelled J-I-R-A-V as in Victor, but it's pronounced like the animal giraffe. I'm now setting it up for 3 clients. I finally feel like I have a cash flow forecasting tool that will get me out of my spreadsheets without losing the power and flexibility that spreadsheets offer me. I can set up my formulas and my drivers and do anything I need to. In the past week, I've been able to set up 6-month rolling averages to project certain expense line items. I'm able to set up an accounts receivable assumption about whether or not it's a 30-day collection period or 45-day. They make it really easy to do. It's a little bit of a learning curve. You would expect it would have to be, but it works, and it works really well. Next one, cashflowtool.com. You all know I love this program. And it keeps coming along further and further in terms of being able to take and they have, algorithms that analyze the history, and based on that project what the future cash flows should look like, and you can tweak that. You can tell it, exclude cash flows from this one customer because it's an anomaly and I don't want it considered in coming up with my cash flow forecast. Cashflowtool.com is awesome. Another one that I've heard of that the way it was presented to me is that it's a bit of a competitor to Giraffe. But I know at least 1 or 2 people who have told me that it's really good. It's called Dry Run. It's spelled just like it sounds, Dry Run. So I've heard good things about that, but I am so hot on Giraffe. Real quick, going back to the category of CRM software. Okay, I just put together a quick list coupling some of what Stephen recommended with the ones that I'm familiar with. Nimble, of course, is my number 1 choice for CRM. We have Zoho, Salesforce, Pipedrive. Airtable could be set up to work like a CRM. HubSpot, Infusionsoft, and ClickUp. Also, ClickUp even has its own tutorials. If I remember correctly, I think Adam had mentioned at one point that he set up ClickUp to work for him as a CRM. We have communications apps. So we have Slack. We have Microsoft Teams, and don't worry, I'm going to provide this list, and Alexa's doing great giving us the links in the chat as well. Slack, Microsoft Teams, there's something called River, spelled R-Y-V-V-E-R, Yammer, which is also Microsoft's product. I don't know, are they going to deprecate that in favor of Teams, or I don't know what the deal is with that. Zoom, of course, for communications, and Loom is another one. Isn't by Loom, Matthew? Do you mean use Loom? Isn't that just a way to record quick videos?
Which is, I mean, that's a form of communication, right?
Right, but when I think of communications, I think of tools where you and I can talk to one another. But I get what you mean, where you can use Loom to record a video and send it to somebody, and you might send it to them in Microsoft Teams and Slack. So, okay, now I get the context of that. Expense management. Again, we have Bilbies and Expensify and Receipt Bank. Management reporting. We have Fiscal Advantage. Stephen mentions this as in white paper, and I couldn't agree more that we still need to consider Excel, that there are going to be things that we can export from our accounting and other tools where Excel is going to be able to be used to cut data up really quickly and make it very presentable and easy to read and understand. So do not dismiss Excel. A lot of people do. A lot of people have written blog posts about how if you're using Excel, it's like you're old school. No. If you say that, you're missing a big important piece of the pie here. Spotlight reporting, and then there's Power BI. I'll tell you a quick story. I know we're over time here, but a quick story about this stuff that goes to when you're choosing these apps and how important it is to consider the company behind the app. I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to badmouth anybody, but one of the companies that we've just mentioned recently here really turned me off because their CEO was very aggressive and pushy with me. In fact, bum rushed me one year at QuickBooks Connect right after I was done talking, and there was a long line of people waiting to thank me. And the CEO of this one company came over to me and was trying to pitch me on their app. And I had to actually stop her and say, look, this is not the time. I have a long line of people here waiting. Get with me later and we can talk. It was there's nothing I can't stand more than that is when somebody's like overly pushy. Payroll. We have QuickBooks Full Service Payroll. Insperity. I've actually talked to a guy from Insperity in the past few years. It looks very interesting. They have a very robust app. It's not just payroll. It's like HR management and all kinds of things that they do. Gusto, of course, ADP, WagePoint, Freedom, and Paychecks. I know I'm going fast now, so Alexa, don't worry if you can't keep up with all this. We have scheduling apps, also not covered by Stephen in his white paper. But things like OnceHub is what I use, which used to be called Schedule Once. Acuity Scheduling, Calendly has paid and free. All these, I think, have paid and free options, actually. And there's others. You know, those are just like probably the top three that come to mind. Time tracking, again, T-Sheets, Toggle, and Harvest. Toggle, I'm not familiar with. Harvest, I've definitely worked with companies who have used it, and I've seen it, and it's pretty good. I'm just curious, and I mentioned this in the beginning, if anybody just real quick has any thoughts on why they would use something other than T-Sheets. Dead. I guess not. Okay. In fact, I talked to somebody this week who's using Harvest, and she was telling me that the integration between Harvest and QBO is clunky at best, if it even exists, that she's having trouble getting Harvest to speak to QuickBooks Online. So we're probably going to switch her over to T-Sheets. And then finally, workflow and process automation. We have Zapier, of course, right? Zapier I love. Automate.io. There's desync.com and Microsoft Flow. Matthew, do you want to quickly talk about some of these?
There's just different alternatives, different ways to use it. So obviously Zapier is one that everybody knows. Automate.io is probably the closest competitor to those where it's very similar. I would go to Microsoft Flow then after that, which is Microsoft's version of Zapier and connecting things. Zapier has by far the most connections as a bridge application. And then desync is a little bit of a higher level if you're doing a lot of data pushes, especially e-commerce. They've got great connections to just pull transaction level from one app to another.
Right. There's also If This Then That, which was actually like the original one of these. If This Then That was the first one that did this kind of stuff. And there's OneSAS. OneSAS is another one. There's another one that kind of falls into here, but it's a very specific sort of drill down on this kind of stuff called PySync. And what it does specifically is it syncs contacts across different platforms. I use it because if I add a new customer in QuickBooks Online, it will sync that over to Nimble And also I have it kind of syncing with my Google contacts, because as much as I would love to say that there should be one tool that has all of my contacts in it and that's what I use always, it's just, that's not reality, right? Because I need Google contacts, because that's what I'm going to use when I'm pulling up a name on this. I can use Nimble on my mobile, but that's not going to work when I'm trying to send somebody an email using G Suite or Gmail, right? So for better or worse, we do need more than one contact management app in this day and age, because I also have contacts in QuickBooks Online who are actual customers, right? So they're all in there, but I don't necessarily need all those people elsewhere and vice versa. So, but PieSync does keep things in sync between different contact components of sort of contact-related management apps, or the contact piece of an app. So that's also something else to take a look at. Stuart mentions in the chat, Chrometa time and billing. I haven't seen that one in a while, but I remember they had something really cool where it would actually like track your actions on your desktop and track how long you've spent in each application, which would help you piece together a timesheet. It seemed really cool. It sounded really cool in concept, but it never seemed to really take off. So I sort of wonder if there were, like, the one thing I could see being clunky about something like that is if I'm flipping between apps a lot, I could see it being difficult to then piece that data together into some kind of a cohesive time tracking outline that could be used to, let's say, pushed into T-sheets or whatever it is. In fact, my friend Lior from who created CogniView's PDF to Excel, at one point he was asking me to look into them. I think he was considering actually buying their app and developing it further. So, but Chrometa's, it's funny, Stuart, because that kind of brings back memories for me from a number of years back. But anyway, thank you all for joining with us today. I will get all these apps listed in the show notes, which we'll put up. Usually I put it up tomorrow. And obviously, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, thoughts, feedback, anything, you know where to find me. We're at Between Wall and Main on Facebook. You can email me. You can go onto my website. You can join 97 and Up. You can go to Matthew's and Linda's group, QB Community Live. You can join Gina and Company later today. Just go to SBAA, Small Business Accounting Advisors, on Facebook, and she'll get you the info you need if you don't already know it for how to join her hangout later today, which you guys get together at 2 p.m. to talk about what you're going to talk about?
Yep.
All right, so 2 p.m., talk about what they're going to talk about, then they go live and talk about it.
Seth, all the links are already on Facebook Live. I grabbed them from Alexa and put them on Facebook Live.
You are the best, Mariette. We have lots of scribes here.
We're a tag team. Alexa and I are a tag team.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to save the chat, and then I'm going to go eat something, and then I have a training with my friends at Giraffe today, which I'm very excited about.
Actually, did we put Giraffe in there? Alexa, I didn't see that one.
Giraffe was in there. I saw somebody put it in. I think Alexa did.
I did. I put it in there.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Thank you.
So, Seth, thanks for having me rather.
Thank you, Satish.
All right. Take care, guys. And everybody.
Bye, everyone.